Hey guys, welcome back to Pat Max Adventures. I am Patrick. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you my travel tips for China. I have never lived in China, however, I have traveled China many times and I do usually travel long periods of time. This last trip was almost 3 months. So these are my perspectives and my tips from a traveler's point of view, and if you want to travel China for a long period of time or if you want to live in China. First, let's start with VPNs. We are all well aware of the Great Firewall in China. If you want to have access to platforms like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Google, you're going to need a VPN. All of these websites, along with others, are blocked in China. There are many VPNs out there that you can get. There are some VPNs that are free. There are some that you purchase. There are two VPNs that I love to use. The first one is called ExpressVPN. The second one is called AstralVPN. Both of these VPNs I had to purchase. I will leave links to the websites in the description down below. I have loved these VPNs. One thing to remember though is VPNs sometimes get blocked in China. On this last trip, unfortunately, the ExpressVPN was blocked and I could not use it for the rest of my time in China. So thank goodness I had the AstralVPN. I like the AstralVPN more. It's a lot faster and it's never been blocked to my knowledge. ExpressVPN has been blocked a few times, but this last time it was blocked for a very long period of time. I don't even know if it's unblocked now. My advice is to make sure that you have at least 2, if not 3 VPNs when you go to China, especially if you're traveling China for a longer period of time like I do, just in case, so then you're not in the country without a VPN. My Capital One website is blocked in China, so if there's an emergency, I cannot access my bank account. So it's very important as a Westerner to have a VPN so you have that outlet to contact outside of China when it comes to money and other things. Visas for China. I'm not going to go too in depth with visas for China. That could be a whole video in itself, but I'll share with you guys my visa and what visa I use. As an American, you have several options. You can get a 30-day visa, you can get double entry, that's where you're in China maybe for a month and then you go to Mongolia and then you re-enter China, or you can get a 10-year visa. The most common visa is a 30-day visa. I believe it's $140 to $150. I don't know. I haven't gotten a visa for China for quite a while. Back in 2017, I got my 10-year visa for China. Every time I visit China, I have 2 months. Right before I hit that 2-month mark, if I want to continue to travel China, what I will do is I'll do a visa run, going to Hong Kong for a day or two, or going up to Mongolia, and then re-entering mainland China, and those 2 months will reset. If you're interested in planning to travel to China often, I highly would suggest a 10-year visa. Food in China is really, really good. But one thing I want to share with you guys that some people may not be aware of is that in China, from my experiences over the years traveling China, and I've been everywhere from Beijing to Shanghai to Shenzhen, Hainan Island, Guangzhou, Xi'an, Guilin, Yangshuo, a lot of these places throughout the country use a lot of oil in their food. That's one thing to get used to in China, is that their food tends to be a bit more oily than a lot of other places. If you have a bit of a sensitive stomach like I do, this may take a little getting used to or adjusting to when you first go to China. So just be aware that the food in general is really good, but it tends to be a bit more oily, or maybe a bit more oily than you're used to. This is one of my favorite things to talk about in regards to China, is transportation. I am in love with China's trains. China is the place to be in the world right now. It is the #1 country in the world when it comes to high-speed trains. They have the most high-speed rails. They have the most trains. Everything is brand new. The trains are fast, efficient, clean. The toilets are clean. You can buy food on there. They're not hard to buy. It's just a great way to travel throughout the country. If you have time while you're traveling in China, I highly suggest taking trains. I personally will take trains anytime I can. If I don't have to fly, I will take a train. I've taken trains all around China, and a lot of people thought I was crazy, but I loved it. You can take a 30-minute high-speed train from Shenzhen to Guangzhou. Amazing. I think it cost, from what I remember, like $25 US. Not very expensive at all. I took a train from Beijing to Xi'an, Xi'an to Chengdu. I took a train from Chengdu all the way to Shanghai. 14-hour train. A lot of people would think I'm crazy to do that. I had the time. I love trains. I love traveling through China on trains, and it was just so relaxing to just sit back, listen to music, go on my computer, and look at the countryside of China as I'm traveling through the country. It's a great way to travel if you have the time. Is China safe? Yes. China is safe. It is very safe. I've been to a lot of countries in Central Asia, Russia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, in Asia, Korea, China, Japan, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Myanmar, Brunei, so many places, and I have to say that China is one of the safest, if not the safest country I've been to so far. There are cameras everywhere in China, and this is one thing I talked about in my first impressions of China, how I didn't like the cameras everywhere in China, and a lot of people were like, why don't you like the cameras? Are you trying to hide something? If you're trying to hide something, then that's the only reason you would be afraid of the cameras. No, take a video of me. I don't care. You can take a video of me of having sex in public. I don't care. I am not shy. Oh my God, I can't believe I said that, but I'm being honest. I really don't care if I'm videotaped. The thing that bothered me is that they have the facial recognition and they can immediately pull up my profile, find out what I've searched on the web, where I'm from, my hometown, my health, everything. That's what I don't like. And I know that my country in America, they do similar things, but in China, it's in your face. There are cameras everywhere you go. However, on the flip side, that is what makes China so safe right now. There's so much surveillance everywhere that nobody's gonna be robbing you. No one's gonna try to do anything, because as soon as they do, that facial recognition, their profile is pulled up right away and they're arrested. So there's not any incentive to go against the law and to be robbed. So that's one great thing about the cameras. The one side, I don't really like cameras because I don't like the fact that they can pull up so much information from me just from the camera. But then on the other side, it keeps me safe. And I'm in one of the safest countries in the world because of it. Money in China, everything is getting paid through WeChat, Alipay, other mobile paying app device options. Everything is mobile right now in China. So if you want to buy a train ticket, you want to go to the convenience store, you want to go to a restaurant, everyone is paying with their phone. Yes, you can still use cash. A lot of people said, well, just have a friend transfer the money to you. Well, it's a bit difficult with banking, and I don't have a work visa, I don't have any special visa in China, so I cannot open a Chinese bank account. However, I did talk to a friend of mine who has been teaching English in China for a few years. He told me that there's always loopholes in China, and if you really want to use Alipay or WeChat, you could go to a bank and try to open a bank account on a traveler visa. Most banks are probably going to deny you, but maybe you could open one and then you could start using Alipay and WeChat Pay, which is still an option. China is definitely moving towards a cashless society, and there were a few times when I used cash and people were like, whoa, I haven't seen cash in weeks. But as a traveler using cash, you're still gonna be just fine using cash. Chinese people, oh wow. Chinese people are really friendly, very interesting, and some of my favorite people in Asia. One thing I will mention about Chinese people that are very similar to Korean people, for those of you who have been following me for a while, you do remember I lived in Korea for 3 years teaching English. I found some similarities between Koreans and Chinese when it comes to being direct. Chinese are very direct. They're not gonna go around the bush. They're gonna tell you how it is. And if you're very sensitive, this is gonna be a bit difficult at first, and this is one thing that Koreans will do as well. In America, in the West, we're very sensitive. We're very careful not to offend anyone. In China, it's not done in a malicious way. They just flat out will tell you what they think and how they feel. That's just one thing to remember in China, that Chinese people are very direct, and not to get too offended or sensitive. People are just gonna tell you what is on their mind and how it is. So really try not to be too offended or too sensitive, because things are not done in a malicious way. It's just the way people are and how things are done there. Personal space is something you're not going to have a lot of in China. You have to remember China is the most populated country in the world right now, over 1 billion people. As you're traveling throughout the country, in train stations, restaurants, subways, there are a lot of people. And if you get caught up in that Western mentality, oh, excuse me, oh, I'm sorry. In China, there's no point in doing it, because there's so many people and everyone is pushing, not in a violent way of pushing, but everyone is pushing and nudging. And if you're apologizing and saying excuse me every time you bump arms with someone, you're gonna it's just not worth it. So when you're in China, don't worry about pushing, don't worry if someone nudges you, don't worry if you nudge someone. Don't worry about saying I'm sorry or excuse me. It's just kind of the way things are there. It's just something to get used to, especially if you're used to apologizing and saying excuse me every time you touch someone, because it's gonna happen a lot in China. Another thing is spitting in China. You're gonna hear that a lot. I mentioned this in my first impressions video of China. The majority of people that spit are the older men. However, I have seen young guys do it, and I have seen women do it. I remember this so clearly in Xi'an in 2017. I was standing on the corner and I hear the I look over and it is this beautiful Chinese woman. Beautiful, she was beautiful. And there she was, spitting like that on the ground, and it just totally destroyed the beauty of her. And I don't mean that in a bad way, it's part of their culture. People just spit, and that's something to get used to, especially if you don't like that sound. You're gonna hear it a lot, and yes, the majority of people that do spit are older men, but you'll see other people spit as well. The language in China. If you can learn to speak some Mandarin before going to China or while you're in China, it's going to be super helpful. When I lived in Korea, I learned to read Korean and I'm able to speak some Korean. I can be dropped anywhere in Korea and I can survive just fine, and I can have small conversations. Unfortunately, I haven't learned really any Mandarin because I haven't really lived in China and I've just traveled China, but it's something I really want to start learning is Mandarin. So if you can learn Mandarin, it's gonna help. You're gonna be able to communicate with people a lot better. I used Google Translate, especially when it comes to menus. You'll come across menus that have no English. If you use Google Translate, there may be other apps as well, but I like using Google Translate. There's an option where you can translate the writing or the characters into English. It's not 100% accurate, and you'll see how I've used it, and I've shown you guys in some of my videos, but it'll give you a good idea of what food you're looking at or what that sign might say. Toilets in China. A lot of people always talk about toilets in China. China uses squatting toilets. Those are the majority of the type of toilets you're gonna find in China, and something that you'll have to get used to. A lot of other countries use squatting toilets as well. Another thing to remember is tissue and toilet paper. Not a lot of restrooms will provide toilet paper or tissue, so make sure that you always have toilet paper or tissue on hand. You're gonna need to have toilet paper with you at all times, trust me. Lastly, I just want to finish with how fast China is growing right now, and I mean that across the board. Every industry, from social media to programming to 5G to renewable energy, all of these industries are growing, and they're growing really fast. The country of China right now is growing really fast. I mean, I see this as China and Asia's century. Things are happening in China right now, and if you're interested in any of these industries, I definitely suggest looking at China from a business perspective. Chinese people right now are really focused, they're making money, they're riding that wave. You can ride that wave too, and it's a really fun and interesting country to travel right now because things are just happening so quickly. Things that are happening right now here in 2019, and even some things I'm sharing with you in this video, in a year from now could be completely different because things are changing so quickly and so many different things are changing. It's a really cool time to visit China right now, and going forward, I think we're gonna see a lot of interesting things coming out of China in the future. I would love to hear from you guys, any tips that you may have if you've traveled China or if you live in China. It's such a fun and interesting place, and there's so many more tips that I could touch on, but these are the ones that I feel would be the most impactful for people traveling to China for the first time. Thanks again for watching, guys, and remember to live every moment to the max. I'll see you guys next time.